I spent 6 months teaching my nephew everything I knew, only to be fired the day I handed him my hard-won contracts. Restructuring. "Auntie," he said with a smirk, shoving a month's pay my way. I nodded, kept my cool, and walked out quietly. But he missed something small, how messy this would get. "Thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you here. Before we get started, let us know where you're from. Leave a comment with your city. Now, let's pick up the story from where we left off. I'm Eleanor Brooks, 58, and for 15 years, I've poured my heart into Brooks's Homegrown, the little organic grocery chain my sister Margaret and I started in Boise, Idaho. It's been my life, unpacking crates of apples at dawn, chatting with farmers over coffee, making sure every shelf tells a story of hard work and care. Margaret's been gone 5 years now, cancer taking her too soon, and I've kept it going for her, for us. Last Friday, I was in the back office of our main store, the one with the creaky chair and the window, overlooking the parking lot. I'd just finished training my nephew Daniel, Margaret's boy, 27, handing him a supplier contract I'd spent weeks negotiating with a local orchard. My hands still smelled faintly of the ink from signing it, and I felt that old flicker of pride, thinking he'd carry a piece of our legacy. Then he hit me with it. "We're restructuring." "Auntie," he said, leaning back in my chair like he owned the place. "Your role's redundant. Today's your last day." His voice was casual, like he was asking me to pass the salt at Thanksgiving. But that smirk, that little twist of his mouth, cut deeper than the words. "Thanks for everything, though," he added, sliding a thin envelope across the desk. I opened it later, 1 month's pay. A pittance after 15 years. I just sat there, the contract still warm in my lap, staring at the kid I'd rocked to sleep when Margaret was too tired. "Mom would have wanted me to modernize this place," he said, fiddling with his phone like I was already gone. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, the kind of ache you feel when you're holding back tears at a funeral. 15 years, every late night balancing the books, every handshake with a farmer who trusted me wiped out in a sentence. And that auntie, dripping with condescension, like I was some old relic he'd dusted off and tossed aside. I'd raised him up, and he'd pushed me out, all in one quiet, ordinary morning. I drove home from the store that Friday with the radio off, the silence heavy like the Boise fog that rolls in every fall. My hands still gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as if I could hold on to something solid after Daniel yanked it all away. Brooks's Homegrown wasn't just a job, it was me and Margaret, 2 sisters starting over after our family farm went under in '98. We'd sit on her porch, sipping tea gone cold, sketching out dreams on napkins, a store where folks could buy carrots still dusted with Idaho dirt, where farmers like us got a fair shake. I can still see her grin when we opened that first shop, paint fumes thick, her hugging me so tight, I felt her heartbeat. 15 years, I kept it going. After Margaret passed, I'd wake up at 4:00 a.m., brew coffee strong enough to strip paint, and head to the store to meet delivery trucks. I'd haggle with suppliers over a folding table in the stockroom, my calculator humming, building trust one handshake at a time. Boise's farming crowd, grizzled guys in flannel and women with dirt under their nails, knew me by name. "Eleanor's got your back," they'd say, dropping off squash or honey for stores now, each one a piece of us. And I'd walk those aisles, straightening jars, feeling her beside me even when she wasn't. Training. Daniel was my way of passing it on. 6 months back, he showed up all restless energy and big ideas, saying he wanted in. I'd sit him down with a ledger, show him how to spot a good deal, or drive him out to meet folks like Mr. Thompson, who'd been growing apples since Nixon. I'd laugh off his fidgeting, thinking he'd settle in. "This is your mum's heart," I told him once, pointing at the bustle of customers on a Saturday. He'd nodded, but his eyes were on his phone, not the store. I should have seen it then. Now, pulling into my driveway, that word redundant stuck like a splinter. My chest ached, not loud and sharp, but slow, like a bruise spreading. I'd given everything, missed dinners with my daughter Sophie, skipped vacations to keep the lights on. And Daniel didn't just take my job, he took Margaret's memory too, twisting it into some slick, modern thing she'd hate. I got out, the gravel crunching under my boots, and stood there, staring at the house I'd paid off with those years. The porch light flickered, same as always, but it felt dimmer somehow. Inside, I dropped my keys on the counter, the clink echoing in the quiet. The staff's faces flashed in my mind. Jane at the register, Mark in produce, all avoiding my eyes as I'd left. Daniel must have told them something. Maybe that I was done. Old news. I sank into the couch, the cushions sagging under me, and rubbed my temples. Pride for what I'd built wrestled with this hollow hurt. Like losing Margaret all over again. I thought family meant something. That blood tied us tighter than a paycheck. But Daniel's smirk said otherwise, and I wondered how long he'd been waiting to push me out. Monday morning, I brewed my usual coffee, the pot gurgling like it always did, and sat at the kitchen table with the Boise paper. I wasn't expecting much, just a quiet day to figure out what came next after Daniel's axe fell. Then I saw it, a half-page ad for Brooks Homegrown, bold and glossy, announcing a fresh start. My eyes snagged on the logo, a sleek green swoosh. Nothing like the hand-drawn apple Margaret and I sketched years ago on her porch. That apple was her idea, a nod to our old farm, its wobbly lines full of heart. Now it was gone, replaced by something cold, corporate, worse. The ad listed the stores, 4 of them, but my name wasn't anywhere. Founded by Daniel Brooks. It read, like I'd never existed. I set the mug down hard, coffee sloshing over the rim, stinging my fingers. 15 years, and he'd scrubbed me out, me and Margaret both. I walked to the sink, rinsing the burn under cold water, but it didn't touch the heat building in my chest. I'd spent Saturday nights painting those store signs myself, ladder wobbling, brush dripping Brooks Sisters in careful letters. Customers knew us old-timers who'd stopped by with stories. Kids who'd traced the apple with sticky fingers. Daniel called it branding consistency in some email I found later. Like our history was clutter he could sweep away. I grabbed my coat and drove to the main store, the one where it all started. The sign out front was new, gleaming metal Brooks Homegrown in that same soulless font. No Eleanor, no Margaret. Inside, the place buzzed like always, shoppers filling baskets. The hum of the cooler, but it felt foreign. Jane at the register glanced up, then away, her smile faltering. I wandered to the produce aisle, where Mark was stacking potatoes, and he mumbled a hello. Eyes on the floor. They knew something had shifted, but nobody said it. I picked up a jar of local honey one. I'd fought to stock and turned it over. My supplier sticker was there, but it felt like a ghost of me. Back home, I stood at the living room window, watching a neighbor rake leaves. The scrape of metal on pavement steady and slow. My reflection stared back, lines deeper around my eyes than I remembered. I wasn't just mad, I was hollowed out, like when you find a photo album with pages torn loose. Margaret and I built this for Boise, for family, not for some kid to polish it up and claim it. Daniel hadn't just taken my job, he'd erased what made it ours. I thought of calling him, demanding answers, but my phone stayed cold in my pocket. What could he say? That I was too old, too stuck in the past. Later, I pulled out an old box from the closet, receipts, sketches, a Polaroid of me and Margaret grinning outside the first store, paint smudged on our cheeks. I ran my thumb over her face, the ache settling in like a winter chill you can't shake. She'd trusted me to keep this alive, and I'd let her son strip it bare. I slid the photo back, the lid closing with a soft thud, and sat there, the house too quiet. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the gutters, and I wondered how much more he'd take before he was done. My hands curled into fists, not loud or fast, but tight, like they were holding on to something he couldn't touch. Not yet. A week after the newspaper ad, I was out back splitting firewood, the axe thudding into pine logs, my breath puffing in the crisp Boise air. It was a rhythm I'd leaned on since Margaret died. Shop, stack, repeat something to keep my hands busy, while my mind wrestled with Daniel's latest cut. Then my phone buzzed on the porch rail, Mr. Thompson's name flashing. I wiped sweat from my brow and answered, expecting his usual gruff hello about apple yields. Instead, he sounded off, voice low. Eleanor, why didn't you tell me you retired? Daniel's taking over your orders now slashed my price by a third. The axe slipped in my grip, clattering against the stump. Retired, I managed. My throat dry as last year's leaves. Thompson fumbled. Said Daniel told him I was stepping back, that he's handling things. Signed a new deal yesterday. 20 years I'd known Thompson drinking his wife's lemonade at their orchard, negotiating fair rates, over his rickety kitchen table. He wasn't just a supplier, he was family, the kind you don't notice until they're gone. I mumbled something about a mix-up, hung up, and stood there, the wind whistling through the pines, cold against my damp shirt. Inside, I sank into a kitchen chair, the linoleum cool under my socks. Daniel hadn't just erased my name, he'd poached my contacts, lied to them, undercut deals I'd spent decades building. I pictured him at Thompson's, flashing that smirk, spinning tales, while I was out here splitting logs like a fool. My stomach twisted, not loud and hot, but slow, like a knot tightening with every breath. I taught him those connections, driven him out there, introduced him, watched him scribble notes. 6 months, and he'd been plotting, waiting to snatch it all. I pulled my laptop from the counter, fingers shaky as I opened my supplier list. Thompson wasn't the only call that day, 2 more came later. Hesitant voices from a berry farm and a honey guy, asking why I'd handed off to Daniel. Each one stung, a quiet betrayal piling up like the wood outside. I didn't cry, though my eyes burned. I just sat there, staring at the screen, the cursor blinking like it was mocking me. Margaret's face floated up her laugh when we'd convinced Thompson to join us, her pride in our little network. Now Daniel was unraveling it, thread by thread. I got up, poured water from the tap, and drank it standing by the sink, the glass sweating in my hand. Outside, a squirrel darted across the yard, oblivious, and I envied it. I'd trusted Daniel with more than a job, trusted him with her memory, with the life we'd carved out. He'd turned it into a game, and I was the loser who didn't see the rules. I thought of calling Sophie, letting her indignation fire me up, but I didn't. The house was still, just the hum of the fridge, and I felt old, not in my bones, but in my heart, like something vital had been scooped out. Later, I rummaged through a drawer for a notepad, the kind I used to jot supplier quirks. Thompson likes mornings. The berry lady hates emails. My handwriting stared back, steady and sure, from a time when trust meant something. I flipped it shut, the slap of paper loud in the quiet, and leaned against the counter. Daniel hadn't just taken my work. He'd stolen pieces of me, relationships I'd nurtured, promises I'd kept. The ache settled deeper, a weight I couldn't split apart like wood. But as I stood there, the faucet dripping softly, a flicker stirred, not hope yet, just a stubborn spark whispering that maybe he hadn't taken everything. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain tapping the roof, steady and soft, like it was trying to wash something clean. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the sting of Thompson's call still lingering. But that flicker from yesterday, the one too stubborn to die, pushed me out of bed. I shuffled to the kitchen, brewed coffee, and pulled an old file box from the hall closet, dust puffing off it like a sigh. Inside were contracts, yellowed edges curling, tied to Brooks Consulting, my LLC from years back. Margaret and I had set it up when we started, a safety net for supplier deals, and I'd kept it quiet, filing through it when the stores got busy. Now, it was my lifeline. I spread the papers across the table, the ink faded, but clear. Thompson's orchard, the berry farm, the honey guy, all locked under my signature. Not Brooks homegrown. Daniel could sweet talk them, undercut prices. But without me, those deals were stuck. My hand steadied as I dialed Clara, my lawyer friend from church, her voice crackling through the line. "Eleanor, you're sitting on gold here," she said, half laughing when I explained. We drafted a letter $150,000 to release the contracts, half what I'd have earned in a year, plus a line demanding co-founder credit. I signed it with a pen that shook just a little, then emailed it off, the whoosh sound sharp in the quiet. By noon, my phone lit up, suppliers flustered, saying Daniel's orders weren't moving. "He's got no paperwork," Thompson grumbled, apologetic now. I sipped my coffee, lukewarm in the mug, and let the calls pile up. Daniel's name flashed next 3 times, then a text. "Auntie, dole me. Urgent." I didn't. I walked to the window instead, watching rain streak the glass, a slow satisfaction blooming, not loud, but warm, like a quilt settling over my shoulders. He'd thought me done, a pushover in a faded apron. But I'd built this web of trust he couldn't untangle. Later, I drove to the diner downtown, the one with the chipped Formica tables, Margaret and I loved. Clara met me, her briefcase thumping beside her. Over pineapple, fittingly she grinned. They'll pay, or they'll stall out. Your LLC's ironclad. I nodded, fork scraping the plate, tasting a hint of control again. But a shadow lingered Margaret's face when she'd hugged Daniel as a kid. Her hope he'd grow strong. I'd hurt him now, her boy, and it sat heavy. Even if he'd forced my hand, I pushed the crust around, the diner's hum, a soft backdrop, and wondered if she'd forgive me. Back home, the rain had stopped, leaving puddles in the driveway that mirrored a grey sky. I sat on the porch swing, the chains creaking, and checked my phone. Another supplier, Mr. Grayson from the co-op, left a voicemail. Eleanor, heard you're free. Got a deal if you're interested, direct. No middleman. I replayed it, his gravelly voice cutting through the fog. Not just revenge, but a door cracking open. I didn't smile, not yet, but my chest loosened, like I'd been holding my breath for days. That evening, I lit a fire, the logs I'd split snapping in the hearth. Daniel's calls kept coming, 5, now each voicemail tighter, pleading, we can fix this. Auntie, name a price. I let them stack, the flames flickering shadows across the room. Satisfaction grew, but so did a quiet ache, not guilt exactly, but a sadness for what we'd lost, what Margaret dreamed we'd be. I poked the fire, sparks drifting up, and felt the weight shift. I wasn't just taking back what he stole, I was building something he couldn't touch. The swing's creak echoed in my mind, steady as the rain had been, and I knew I'd sleep tonight, not whole, but stronger than I'd been in weeks. Friday dawned clear, the kind of crisp Boise morning that makes you want to linger outside. I was pruning the roses Margaret planted years ago, their thorns snagging my gloves, when my phone buzzed against the patio table. It was a number I didn't know, but the voice was familiar. Thomas Haskell from Green Valley Company, the biggest organic distributor in the valley. Eleanor, we need to talk, he said, gruff but warm, like he'd just stepped off a tractor. Heard about your mess with Daniel. He's botching our orders, half our suppliers are stalled. Want to meet? I snipped a dead bloom, the petals fluttering to the dirt, and said yes. An hour later, I sat across from Thomas in his cluttered office, a trailer parked near their warehouse, the air thick with diesel and coffee. He leaned back, boots on the desk, and got straight to it. Daniel's a kid playing grown-up. We're done with Brooks's homegrown pulling our contract. But we want Brooks Consulting direct. 50 grand plus bonuses if you keep us moving. No middleman. I blinked, the numbers sinking in over the hum of a forklift outside. It wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline, bigger than anything Daniel could have dreamed. Driving home, the radio played some old Johnny Cash tune, low and steady, and I felt a lift, not a shout, but a quiet hum in my chest. Triumph, sure, but softer, like the sun breaking through after a long freeze. I stopped at the grocery, grabbed a loaf of bread and some butter, simple stuff, and smiled at the cashier. A kid who didn't know my world had just flipped. At home, I toasted a slice, the smell filling the kitchen, and ate it slow, crumbs dusting the counter. Daniel's texts kept pinging, Auntie, please, let's talk, but they felt distant, like static I could tune out. That afternoon, I called Clara to hash out Thomas's offer. They're cutting Daniel loose, she said, her voice crackling with a grin. He's flailing, lost Thompson and Grayson already. I pictured him in that office, my chair scrambling as his modern dream unraveled. It stung less now, those pleas, though a shadow lingered Margaret's laugh when she'd brag about him to neighbors. I signed the Green Valley contract on my laptop, the click of the mouse sharp, and leaned back, the chair creaking under me. Not revenge, not quite just me standing up when he'd bet I'd stay down. Later, I walked the neighborhood, leaves crunching under my boots, the air cool against my face. A neighbor waved, her dog tugging at the leash, and I waved back, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. My phone buzzed again. Grayson, the co-op guy, doubling down on his offer from yesterday. Heard you're with Green Valley, he said. We'll match it, direct deal. 2 offers in a day. And I hadn't chased either. I thanked him, said I'd think it over, and kept walking. The sunset painting the sky orange over the foothills. Back home, I lit a candle lavender. One Sophie got me last Christmas, and watched the flame flicker on the mantel. The house was still, just the tick of the clock, but it didn't feel empty anymore. Daniel's world was shrinking, Supplier's jumping ship, and mine was growing not out of spite, but because I'd built something real. I thought of Margaret, how she'd nudge me at farmers' markets, saying, "You're the glue," and felt a steadiness settle in, not loud, but deep, like roots pushing through soil. Before bed, I checked my email. Thomas's team had sent a welcome note, already looping me in on schedules. I shut the laptop, the screen's glow fading, and stood by the window. Stars pricked the dark, same as always. But tonight they looked brighter. Daniel could keep his texts, his panic. I was moving forward, not just surviving, and that felt like enough for now. 3 weeks later, I stood at Green Valley's new warehouse opening, the Boise sun glinting off steel beams as Thomas cut the ribbon. I'd finalized their supplier deals, Thompson, Grayson. The works my name back on the paperwork where it belonged. The crowd clapped, a mix of farmers and suits, and Thomas slapped my shoulder, saying, "Eleanor's the backbone here." I nodded, the praise settling warm but bittersweet. That morning, I'd heard Green Valley pulled funding from Brooks' homegrown, entirely Daniel's mismanagement the final straw. 2 stores shuttered, staff walking out, his grand vision crumbling like stale bread. I drove home slow, past the main store, its sign dim, a closed notice taped crooked on the door. I didn't stop, just glanced. The emptiness tugged at me. Margaret's dream, half gone now, and I couldn't shake the weight of it. Later, at the farmer's market, I spotted Daniel by a stall, haggling over carrots. His shoulders slumped, no smirk in sight. Our eyes met. He looked away fast. A kid caught sneaking cookies. I turned to my booth, Brooks Consulting's first gig, signing up new clients, and felt a pang. Not sharp, but dull, like an old bruise. Back home, I brewed tea, the kettle whistling as steam fogged the window. My phone buzzed. Sophie. Giddy. "Mum, Daniel's a mess, lost another store, and the staff's calling you the real boss." I stirred honey in, the spoon clinking, and murmured, "It's not a win." "Honorable," she laughed, but I didn't. I'd started hiring 2 women, 50s like me, pushed aside elsewhere, building something new, not tearing down. Still, seeing him humbled stirred a quiet ache. Margaret's boy, lost in his own mess. Next day, I raked leaves in the yard, the scrape of metal on grass steadying me. The air smelled of earth and smoke. Boise settling into fall. Daniel's fall wasn't my doing. He'd bet on flash, not roots, and lost. I piled the leaves, my breath puffing, and thought of Margaret's grin when we'd raked together, plotting our next move. She'd hate this, a split, her store fading, but she'd nod at me now. I think, for standing tall. There's a lesson here, one I've chewed on while the leaves drift. Family's not a shield you hide behind. It's a promise to hold each other up, not knock each other down. Daniel saw my years as baggage, something to toss for his shiny ideas, but time builds things trust. Know how, a name folks lean on. I didn't set out to ruin him, I just refused to let him ruin me. That's the quiet truth. When someone cuts you loose, thinking you're spent, you don't have to claw back. You grow where they can't reach. I'm 58, not done. And these roots I've got, they're deep, feeding something stronger than he'll ever know. I dropped the rake, the pile finished, and went inside. The house warm, mine again. Thank you for spending your time with the story. It truly means a lot. Every family drama hides a quiet pain, a silent cry, or a feeling no one talks about. If this story made you feel anything, anger, sadness, or even comfort, drop a comment below. You might be putting into words what someone else has always felt, but never said.